Hello everyone, and welcome in to the 716 Sports Blizzard. And today, my guest is Brian Koziol from WGR. How how's your morning going so far?
Good, Robbie. Thanks for having me. We're getting ready for another Sabres game tonight. After a couple of losses this week, obviously the Sabres are hoping to bounce back, but we're getting ready to go. We got some big news yesterday with Rasmus Dahlin, but this team's got a tough task here as they start a road trip tonight in Carolina.
How how do you think the Sabres have been doing like the past week, getting those points in overtime?
Yeah, they had a really nice streak going. I mean, up until the last game, um, up against St. Louis, they had 7 straight games where they were able to get points. So that's something that I feel like has been a big improvement for this club. One thing last year we talked about when we looked back at the standings, what are some areas and some ways that they can get better in terms of moving themselves up the standings? And one of those was that they did not do a very good job in years past of getting games to overtime and guaranteeing themselves at least a point. And they did that in 7 in a row and have done that in 7 of 8 now. So in that sense, I want to give them credit for that. Now, at the same time period, they also lost the majority of those games that went to overtime. So, if you look at it right now, they've actually only won, in terms of getting 2 points, 1 of their last 6, which isn't that great. So I feel like you could argue it's great that they're getting games to overtime that maybe in the past they wouldn't, but at the same time, they are not finishing them. At some point, you have to start to accumulate some wins as well. And they've only won 1 of their last 6. And right now they're dealing with some injuries. They have their captain that's going to be away from them, at least for the foreseeable future here, for the short term, maybe long. We don't know how long it's going to be. And their offense really is struggling right now. They had no goals against San Jose, 1 goal against Utah, and they hadn't scored in the 2 periods plus overtime against Washington. They've got 1 goal in 8+ periods at home over the course of the last set of games. So their offense right now is in a rut. Their power play is not helping them at all. And those are some areas that are going to have to get cleaned up. But, I look at the standings, and you probably would sit here and say, well, how are they doing better? Because they're tied for last. And I guess, I don't have a strong argument to say that they're doing that much better. I don't think they've buried themselves because of how tight they are in the Eastern Conference right now. The Sabres come in right now tied for last with Columbus and the Islanders. They all have 14 points. However, you're 2 wins away from being in second in the Atlantic Division, depending upon what some of these other teams do. The Bruins have played 2 more games than Buffalo, but they've won 5 in a row. They're playing really well. Detroit is also at 18 points. They're in second place as of this moment. So you're 2 wins from second place. So it's not like the world is ending here. But when you look at the standings and you see them at the bottom, it's a friendly reminder again that they're not where they need to be. So I guess I kind of argued both there for you, that they're doing a little bit better. They haven't buried themselves, but at the same time, they've got to start getting the offense going, which can add up to some wins.
How do you think the Sabres can get better in goal with UPL and Ellis and Lyon?
Yeah, I think overall this year, we found out that Alex Lyon can be a reliable goaltender. We know that the season is still young, but he's now played double-digit games, and I think that there's enough of a sample size to say that the Sabres can count on him. I would say there's maybe only been 1 game that I've been disappointed in terms of what Alex Lyon has brought to the team. For the most part, I think he's done a really nice job. Luukkonen has been inconsistent. He's played 3 times. I've really loved one of his starts in that win over Washington. He was dominant in the third. He was dominant in the overtime. He stopped all 5 shootout attempts in that win over the Capitals. So he was very good there. Kind of got back to looking like the Luukkonen that had played great 2 seasons ago. But the game in Toronto that they lost in overtime, his first start, I thought he led in a very poor third goal, which tied the game. Couldn't stop Tavares in overtime, which ended up making them lose that game. And then this last outing, while I wouldn't put him at the top of the reasons why they lost, he still let in, 2 goals that in the end, maybe you'd say you'd like to have him saved, especially the second one that St. Louis scored the other night from Bukestad. I thought that was a goal that he has to stop just to give Buffalo a chance. Now, in the end, as we really analyze that St. Louis loss, they scored 0. So when you start to throw the blame around for that loss, you can't start with the goaltender when you scored 0. I'm going to start more with the offense. However, if you ask me, how did he play in that game? I would say it was inconsistent again. At the end of the night, St. Louis got an empty netter. You'd say, well, if your goalie lets in 2, but here's the thing. It could play out differently if he can be able to stop those 2. Maybe it's still 0-0. Maybe it's going to overtime and they pick up another point along the way and the streak continues and we can still talk about it. Maybe they figure out a way to win in overtime. But in that game, Joel Hofer outplayed Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen. If you're just solely looking at the goaltending matchup head-to-head, Hofer was amazing. The Sabres got goalied in that game from a guy that came in with a goals against average over 5. It was a 5.02 goals against and an 836 save percentage. Those are terrible numbers. But now Hofer's 2-0 in his Sabres career against Buffalo. It's crazy. He has 2 now shutouts against Buffalo. The other time that he played the Sabres, it was a 3-1 win. And you say, well, how did he have a shutout? Well, officially, a goal was let in, but it was an own goal scored by St. Louis. So he actually stopped every single Buffalo shot in that game. Kind of a weird, quirky stat from the previous time that Hofer played against the Sabres, but he's had a good time of it. Now tonight they're going to play Carolina. I would expect we're going to see Alex Lyon back in today. When Ruff meets with the media before the game, we'll confirm that a few hours before puck drop. But I would say, this is going to be a tough road trip. Carolina is very, very good in the sense that they make it hard for Buffalo to play against. The Sabres have not had a good track record there. And then they've got tough road games at Utah. Utah's been playing great, at Colorado, and then at Detroit. That's what's upcoming. But to fully answer your question about what's in goal, when Alex Lyon plays, I feel pretty confident the Sabres are going to get a good outing from their goaltender. I still don't know if we know anything much about Colton Ellis other than the fact that he had a really nice story in his first start. I was surprised that he didn't play the other night against St. Louis. Again, in the end, maybe it made no difference because Buffalo scored 0. So whether it was Lyon again, Luukkonen in, or Ellis in, I thought maybe Ellis against his old team, that would have been the spot to get him back in. He ended up being the backup that night. But overall, if I'm judging Lyon, because he's played the bulk of the games, I think they've done a good job in net. Luukkonen has to be more consistent when he plays. And the book is still out on Ellis. We still don't really know what we have. We just saw that one feel-good story, one start, and we've only seen one from him in terms of playing against NHL competition.
When is the NHL trade deadline for the NHL teams?
Yeah, now that usually is close to the end of February and the beginning of March. So you've got quite a while for that to happen. I would say it's going to be at least, you're talking into games like 50 and 60 by the time we sit here and get a trade. The official date this year is March 6th, 2026. So we do have quite a while here before we got it, all through November, December, January, February, and into March. So, we're talking almost 5 months before this season's going to get to that trade deadline spot. As we get closer to that moment, if Alex Tuch doesn't have a contract extension, that'll be definitely on everybody's radar because he will be a free agent at the end of the season. So that's something that I think we'll be keeping a close eye on. I'm surprised that he hasn't been re-signed at this moment, but we've got a lot of hockey to go here. Probably, as I said, 5 months worth of hockey, 4 months worth of hockey here before we can start maybe talking about who's going to get traded. A lot of times in the NHL, because everybody is still right now alive, no one's been eliminated. You're not going to see a ton of trades here over these next few months. It usually doesn't start going until maybe at least January or February. So I know fans are always looking for trades. I would highly doubt you're going to see anything major happen here early in the season just because GMs and coaches and teams are still trying to figure out what they have and, are they going to be in it? Are they not going to be in it? And right now, because it's so early in the standings or so early in the season, everybody is still in it. Yes, maybe some teams are off to a bad start, but there's still only been, most teams have played 14, 15 games. The Sabres have played 14 games. You're still trying to figure out maybe what you have. When we start to get closer to January and February, I think that's when we'll start to talk more about trades. The only trade that I could really realistically see happening is maybe with a goalie, because the Sabres have 3, and at some point, the Sabres, I would think, would hope that they'll be healthy enough that they might have to do something and not be able to carry 3 goalies. If Colton Ellis is waived, he will not go to Rochester. I think St. Louis will pick him up right away, or another team may. So I think them having to figure out how to carry 3 goalies, I think they can do it right now while they have all these injuries. But if they get back to being healthy, then I think at some point maybe that could be a trigger for Kevyn Adams that he might have to move one of them.
And I think Alex Tuch is a good player, like in the locker room and being like with the group that we have.
I agree. I think Tuch to me is a must resign. I think it's a huge fail if they don't figure out a way to get this done. Look, you may have to overpay for Alex Tuch, and in my eyes, it's okay. The salary cap is only going up. The Sabres have space to do it. They have space to do it now. So I don't see why there would be any reason not to re-sign him, with the understanding that you might even have to give him a longer term deal. And at the end of it, it might turn out to look like, you're not getting the most out of this money, or he's being overpaid for what his age at that point, if this ends up being a 7 or an 8 year deal. But you have to do it. You have what I would consider an all-star level player, a guy that can score 30 to 35 goals, a guy that can play in all ends. He can play on the power play. He's outstanding killing penalties. He's one of the best penalty killers, I think, in the NHL. Defensive forward, I know that's a goal for him this year, is to really, really try to get some attention towards that Selke Award, to be one of the best defensive forwards in the league. I think he's very, very good in that sense. And 5-on-5, he's good as well, too. So he can play on all 3 facets of the game. In terms of the symbolism of keeping Alex Tuch, he's a top player, a top tier player who, I mean, I'm not putting him in the class of McDavid or Draisaitl or McKinnon, but when you talk about that next tier of players, that next group of players after that level, I think Tuch's in that mix. And, for him to say that he wants to be a Buffalo Sabre, for his connection his whole life, that he's been a Buffalo Sabres fan, that he's dreamed about putting on this uniform, like, there's not a lot of players in the league that are good that can say that about wanting to play for this organization. I mean, how many stories, Robbie, have we heard about maybe players that Kevyn Adams has tried to get, previous GMs have tried to get either in free agency or trade, and they've had a no trade clause, and Buffalo's been on that list, or they won't come to Buffalo. They'll even take less money elsewhere because they don't think the organization is in the right spot to win right now, if that really matters to the player. You have a guy who is a top-level player who can play in all 3 facets of the game. He represents the team well. He's a leader. He's an assistant captain. He's a potential long-term captain at some point if the Dahlin thing doesn't work out. I mean, like, I think he checks a whole bunch of boxes. And the fact that he wants to play for this organization, like, let's face it, it's a rarity right now for a really good player in the NHL. So if I'm Kevyn Adams, I'm figuring out a way to get this done. I'm surprised that it wasn't done in the offseason. As it lingers and gets closer and closer to the trade deadline, the pressure is going to be on Kevyn Adams, to me, that he's got to figure out a way. There's no absolute way in the end that they can just let him walk for free at the end of the season and let him sign somewhere else. I mean, that would be totally inexcusable on behalf of the organization if it got that far.
And one of our former players, Olofsson, we play against him this week.
Yeah, I mean, you look at what some of these other players are doing around the league. Olofsson, we know, we've watched Sam Reinhart raise the cup a couple of times. Jack Eichel, of course, raising the cup before that. So, yeah, I mean, I'm sure for Sabre fans, it's pretty painful that you're seeing former Sabres have success elsewhere. And you're also seeing some other former Sabres that they've moved on with that aren't having as much success. I mean, Casey Middlestad has been in and out of the lineup for the Bruins. You look at that trade that Kevyn Adams made with Colorado to get Bo Byram. I would say they won that trade. There's some trades that I think Kevyn Adams has done a nice job with. I think the Ryan McLeod trade so far has worked out in their favor. Now, again, Matt Savoy, we don't know what type of NHL career he's going to have, but the Sabres have to start getting NHL-ready players or NHL-proven players in their lineup. So far, I would say he gets a winning grade for that McLeod trade that he did with Edmonton. So, I don't have necessarily a lot of problems with some of the trades that Adams has made, but probably still the biggest one right now that's looking bad on his side is the Dylan Cousins trade. And it's not even that Dylan Cousins was performing that well with Buffalo. He's gone to Ottawa. He's been fairly successful. Ottawa, I think, has been happy with what they've gotten. But you trade for an injury-prone player in Josh Norris, and he has not been able to stay on the ice. That's been a big, big disappointment. I think one of the exciting parts of what was coming into this season was seeing what can Josh Norris be on your top line, possibly with Tage Thompson. How would those two work? A couple of preseason games that they were together, Norris and Thompson, they were excellent. And I thought there was a lot of excitement about maybe what could be with those two guys. And the fact that he got injured so quickly here on the season, likely maybe not going to see him till December. We still have another month and more before Norris comes back. And every game that he doesn't play, that trade does not look good for Kevyn Adams. I know injuries are a freak thing. I mean, I'm not going to blame Kevyn Adams for a guy getting hurt, but there was a risk label that you were taking on with this trade, with Norris being injury prone. And let's face it, the end of last year, I mean, he barely played. This year, he's barely played. I mean, so far, it's a clear win for Ottawa. If you're judging the trade on November 8th here today, it's a clear win for Ottawa in that deal.
What was Josh Norris's injury that
right now, he took a face-off at center ice late in the game. I think it was maybe the third game of the season here this year. And he went down, and it didn't look good. People thought maybe it was a re-aggravation of his old oblique injury. The team is just saying upper body. So in terms of its real, distinct description right now, that's really all I can give you in terms of what's official. But the Sabres did say it was unrelated to his old oblique injury. So that's at least at the moment what we can go on as of that. But we know it's a serious one because, it's kept him out now from mid-October. And they said it was a 6 to 8 week injury. So, multiple months, the timeline that we're hearing, he is back skating on his own. So that's a good sign. The initial timeline that we were hearing was that maybe he'd be back at some point mid-December to late December. So, but you still got another month of games here before he's likely coming back. And, that means probably another 12 to 15 games where the Sabres they've played 14. So, maybe we're sitting on game 30 by the time he comes back. I don't know, game 25, game 30, somewhere in there. So, I mean, that's still, that's more than a quarter of the season that they're playing without what's supposed to be their top line center.
Do you think that the Sabres with Ostlund and Rosen coming up from Rochester, do you think they're still going to stay as long as they can?
I think, Robbie, they're going to stay for now while there is opportunity to play due to the injuries. The Sabres have a long list. I just mentioned Norris. Benson is still on injured reserve. Jason Zucker is still on injured reserve. Yuri Kulik still on injured reserve. So you've got 4 quality forwards right now that are out. Tyson Kozak, they just got back. But I think there's others that would come out of the lineup first. Now, we think maybe Zucker and Kulik could be close. Who knows? We might even get some news, as I said, later today that maybe one of them is even able to play tonight against Carolina. But I think when you're talking about guys coming out of the lineup, I know Mason Gergston is a guy that would be below those two. Josh Dunn, I think, has been really impressive. I still think Roseanne and Ostlund at the moment maybe would get a chance to play over them. I think it also depends on who comes back. I like that Lindy Ruff's given them a chance to play with quality, skilled players. I know the other night he put Roseanne and Ostlund with Tage Thompson. It did not work out. I know that, I was talking with Paul Hamilton from our station from WGR. He had said that they hadn't even taken practice shifts together. He said he was very surprised that they were all together. And you could kind of tell they were out of sync. And I don't know necessarily if they were intimidated by playing with Tage. Maybe that's too strong of a word, but they were definitely out of sync. And maybe, some of the thoughts about playing with Tage, that could have been something that maybe they thought like, hey, we have to feed this guy. They didn't play necessarily the smartest game that they could have. I've been pretty impressed, though, overall with those two so far. Roseanne was very disappointing in the prospects tournament when I saw him and was working those games. I feel like maybe this is his last good opportunity to play with high quality players. I think so far he's done a decent job of taking advantage of it. He's got a good shot. Ostland's a guy that likes to go around the net and could do some things, which I know Lindy Ruff approves of. He loves players in that capacity. He plays a nice complete game as well. He's very good defensively too. So far so good on those two. Again, keeping expectations in check for guys that have come up from the AHL. I think those two playing together is okay. I wonder though, I don't know if we'll see them playing with Thompson tonight. I think overall they might get broken up, or they might end up playing with a different forward somewhere else, because when they were together with Thompson the other night against St. Louis, it didn't go very well.
How long have you been with GR55?
So I've been working there since 2001. So I guess this would make year 25 for me. I started working a Saturday afternoon shift. I was the producer for Sports Talk Saturday, and then I would stay through the afternoon. And at the time, we carried New York Yankees games. So I was the producer or the board op. Basically, I was there pressing the buttons, the commercials, getting, at the time, John Sterling and Michael Kay, who now does the TV for Yes. Sterling, of course, the retired radio announcer. The two of them were the radio announcers at that time. And so my job was to do a little of Sports Talk Saturday and a little bit of producing Yankees baseball. And then at times, too, I would produce on Sundays, which meant I did some NASCAR races, which we used to carry quite a bit back in the day. We don't carry those anymore, but that was kind of how I started out. I got an opportunity at times to fill in on Sports Talk Saturday when some of the regular hosts were out. Myself and Jeremy White, who, of course, now is been making it big many, many years on our morning show each day from 6 to 10 on WGR. He and I were hosting Sports Talk Saturday together. In terms of my Sabres job, I've been hosting now since 2007. So this is season 18 for me. And I took over after the 2 years that they went to the conference finals. And yes, lucky me, those amazing 2 runs, I take over as host from Brad Ryder, who did a wonderful job hosting those games those years. And they've gone to the playoffs twice. They've been knocked out of the first round both times. So yes, maybe I'm part of the bad luck with this organization not doing well. But I love hosting post games, because with games, you never quite know what you're going to be talking about when the game's over. That's part of the fun to me. I feel like sports is the best reality TV. There is no script. You never know what's coming. But I've been hosting the Sabres for 18 years. Some of the other things at the station that I've been able to do, fortunately, back in 2002, my second year when I was at the station, I got an opportunity to cover the U.S. Golf Open at Bethpage Black, which is where they just had the Ryder Cup this year. Tiger Woods won the U.S. Open that year. That's kind of how I really got into starting to cover golf, and eventually was a part of Tee to Green, which now is a golf show that I do on Saturday mornings along with some of other people, Kevin Sylvester, who works for PGA Tour Radio, PGA Pro Jeff Meadis, who's a great PGA Pro here in the area, Jeff Blank, he's our stats and social media guy. We've got a nice team that we do that for, and I've kind of become the station's, I guess you'd say, golf guy. So go on with Chopin the Bulldog during all of the majors for the 4 major tournaments to do previews, and we do our fun Pick 10 betting segment with them. So between the Sabres and now Tee to Green, that's kind of my lanes that I've been working quite a bit with. I also have done, for a decade or more, Triple Crown shows for the 3 big horse races, for the Kentucky Derby, for the Preakness Stakes, for the Belmont Stakes. I do shows out at Batavia Downs. Ryan Hasenauer, who's the promotions director and director of communications out there, he and I do shows out there to preview those races. We always have a good time doing that. So that's kind of like my regular jobs right now at the station. Sabres host, that obviously takes up quite a bit of time. Tee to Green and covering golf for the station. And then I do those Triple Crown shows as well. So, but to answer your original question, yeah, I've been there since 2001, and it's been a blast. Gotten to cover so many fun events, whether it's Bills games, Bills training camps, Sabres games, Sabres playoff games, tons of golf tournaments along the way. Even some local sporting events that have been fortunate to where we're able to get credentialed to be there. It's been a great experience. I love doing podcasts and things like that and meeting new people that have their own shows, Robbie, just like you and some others, where people are trying to, figure out a way to get themselves their passion for sports, and what you do with your podcast and what others do with their podcasts. It's a lot of fun. And, I'm really fortunate to be able to be a part of the station.
I hope Paul Hamilton tunes in or listens to the show. I mean, I like him like as the reporter for the Sabres and all his different interviews he does.
Paul's got a difficult job. He has to go into the locker room mere minutes after the game is over and talk to these players, especially after losses. They're disappointed. They're mad. They might be pissed off that they did something that maybe, might have been a piece of why this team lost. And, let's face it, Paul has got the microphone and going live on our station, on our post-game show, asking them questions. I mean, that's a tough spot for him to be in. Obviously, the players after losses, like they don't want to talk about it, but they know that that's part of their job. That's part of what goes with playing professional sports, and all the attention that they get and all the good that the media can bring in terms of spotlighting them and giving them attention. And it's their conduit to the fans. Without Paul in the locker room and these other reporters in the locker room, whether it's them covering the Sabres or others covering the Bills or whoever, the media is our way to, learn about these players, get their stories, hear their side of the things. Paul's been covering the team, forever. I mean, 40 some years. Amazing. He's been covering the team back, in the 80s and at Memorial Auditorium, and he's covered so much. I really rely on Paul quite a bit in terms of putting things into perspective, because he's been covering the team for so long. He played high-level hockey at Iowa State. I'm sure people have heard maybe this story from time to time. Paul was very close to being on the 1980 Miracle on Ice team. So he's played high-level college hockey. He was down to one of the final, cuts there to almost make that 1980 Olympic team as a player. So we know he knows the game. Paul is a guy that's very passionate about the Sabres, and he covers the team outstandingly. Paul and I are hoping that the Sabres will do better, because for us, we know when the Sabres do better, more people want to watch the Sabres and listen to the Sabres and hear our coverage and interact with us. And while we are going to cover the team, just as much and give it as much focus and give it as much analysis as we can when they're playing poorly, we obviously would love to be covering Stanley Cup playoffs again. There's nothing like being in that arena when the playoffs are going on here in Western New York. For those that remember those conference title runs, when there were conference finals runs, the 2 years out of the lockout, 05 and 06, I mean, the party in the plaza had 10,000 people outside, another, almost 20,000 inside KeyBank Center. And the atmosphere around Buffalo, with how big it is around for the Bills, there's a whole generation, Robbie, of younger people like yourself and others that maybe haven't seen them be as successful. My son is 16. He's never seen the Sabres be good. And I always tell him, like, geez, I can't wait for you to experience that. He and amongst all of his teenage friends, they've never even seen the Sabres be good. And I just know that with how exciting it is, right now, the Bills being so good and how the community gets caught up in all of it in such a positive manner, I'm really hoping that the Sabres can turn it around as quickly as possible, because the love affair with the Sabres with this team, to me, is very strong as well.
Do you have any questions
for you, Robbie?
Yeah.
Yeah. How long have you been doing this podcast? Tell everybody a little bit about it.
I think it's been two years, I think. And I started with Ranting Ron. He used to have a show also before. Yep. And he had all different guests like Howard Simon and some professional women's hockey players when the Buffalo Buttes were an organization. And
yeah, I was on Ranting Ron show a couple of times, so I don't know, maybe you were even involved in it when I was on. Yeah, that's what I love about podcasting now, is that, you know, if you're passionate about sports and you're passionate about talking about sports, like these platforms now that we have, like we're on here today, it's such a great outlet for everybody to be able to interact, you know, with friends and passionate fans and people that follow the team and professionals in the business that cover the team. Like it's such a cool avenue for us to be able to interact in this way. I do got one more for you, Robbie. I know I see bowling pins behind you. I know I've been fortunate enough to meet your father, who I know is a big bowler and a big organizer of bowling across Western New York here. And you're a really good bowler yourself. So why don't you brag for a minute about your bowling game here? Tell everybody about your bowling expertise.
Well, I've made a few friends like that are professionals, and like Jack Jurek, who runs a pro shop, and I have a few other friends that like go on tour, or they're on the PBA 50-60 tour.
Super cool. Yeah, my son is, as I said, he's in high school, and he's been on his school's team now for this will be his third year on the team, and it's been fun going to watch him and seeing some of the high school bowlers across Western New York. Some really, really high quality players at that age, and even, you know, at other ages. So it's been fun kind of getting to learn a little bit about the bowling scene in Western New York and meet some of the coaches from across the high schools, and some of the other parents that are involved that are very good players themselves, like your dad. So that's been kind of fun for me, for as many sports as I've been covering and paying attention to. Now getting a chance to kind of learn another one has been a lot of fun for me.
Do you think the Sabres will like win tonight and try to start another streak?
Well, obviously that's their plan. To me, I guess, not to dodge your question, but I need to know a little bit more about who's playing and who's not before maybe I would give you a definite yes or no. I mean, here's it is. The NHL, anybody can beat anybody on any night. So on paper, are they favored to win? No. They've done terribly in Carolina over the last handful of years. It's a building that they've struggled with. It's a team that they've struggled with. Carolina is relentless on them. They don't give them a lot of space. If you make a mistake against the Hurricanes, they make you pay. They've got skillful players that can do it. And they're a team that likes to kind of be a pest and be on you here. And the Sabres are going to have to be at their best here tonight in terms of being sharp with the puck. If they're sloppy with it, Carolina is going to take advantage of it and bury him for it. So, you know, on paper, you'd say tonight, you know, are they underdogs? Yes. But, I mean, it's the NHL. Anybody can beat anybody on every night. I mean, look at what happened the other night. All the numbers would have said that St. Louis was in for it. They had played back-to-back nights, travel in between. They got in very late. They're playing a goaltender that has horrendous numbers with a goals against over 5. And the Sabres were home resting, ready to go. and all the chances and all the, the high danger opportunities, the shots, the shot attempts, everything was in Buffalo's favor, you'd say, my eyes said they should have won that game. And very disappointing that they ended up not. But in the end, if your goalie has a great night, they were able to pull it out. So if Alex Lyon ends up playing tonight and he has an amazing night, there's no reason why the Sabres can't win. I mean, when you play 82 games, anything can happen any night. So, officially, if you were saying break it down, I would say the Sabres, their track record in Carolina hasn't been great. They've got a lot of injuries. The task is tall for them to win tonight, but sure, they could definitely win it. But they're going to need great goaltending because right now their offense is struggling. Their power play is struggling. They've got some skilled players out. And with no Dahlin tonight now because he has his leave of absence, that's another huge generator of offense. He's outstanding at bringing the puck up, bringing it into the zone, and just kind of creating plays back from the blue line. So that's another big loss for Buffalo to not have Dahlin out there. Understandably so why he's not going to be out there, but our thoughts are with him. And Carolina, is I know they're going through obviously her recovery efforts from her heart transplant, but not having Dahlin is huge. So hopefully for the Sabres' sake, they'll get some of their forwards. We'll get some good news maybe here in a few hours that some of them might be back either tonight or very soon.
Do you what's your schedule, like how you are on the radio? And
Yep. So for tonight, specifically, we go on the air an hour before the game. So the game is scheduled for 7:00 Eastern. So I'll be on WGR at 6. Paul Hamilton is at the game. So Paul travels and is on the road with the team. So Paul will go to the morning skate today, and he will get some pregame interviews. So those interviews that if you ever listen to the pregame show, Paul gets those that morning of. He records them with the players. And then Lindy Ruff as well. So we'll get some injury news and, who's in, who's out. Maybe we'll be able to find out who the goalie is as well. Lindy Ruff doesn't usually let the media know who the goalie is, but Paul, being the good reporter that he is, there's ways to figure it out at practice and other things like that. So we may have a news on that. And then, so while Paul's covering that, usually, at some point later this morning, I'll talk with Paul on the phone and he'll kind of give me the lowdown on what he learned from the morning skate. He'll give me some background on the interviews themselves. If there's something specifically that he said, hey, you really need to listen to this second question. It's something we're going to want to talk about. I'll make sure I go kind of into our computer system and listen to it ahead of time to make sure that I've got all that prepped ahead of time. Paul and I will talk during the first portion of the pregame show. He'll be in the press box in Carolina. And that's kind of how that goes. And then, I'm just making sure myself and my producer, we communicate during the day of, hey, this is the order we're going to play those interviews in. These are some of the other elements that we need for the pregame show. And then Paul again and I talk at about 6:45. We do his keys to the game during pregame. And then at 7:00, that's usually where the hardest part of my job starts. It's the timing. It has to be perfect. At exactly 7:00 on your clock, that's when all of our network stations come in. So 7 other stations join us on the network. That's why you'll never hear me say WGR after 7:00 when the game starts. I always say Sabres Radio Network at that point because there's stations in Rochester, stations in Olean and in Jamestown and in Dunkirk and in Batavia and London, Ontario, and all across Western New York that are all a part of the Sabres Radio Network. So my job is to take you up to the national anthem. Then I toss it to Dan Dunleavy, Rob Ray. Of course, they call the games. And then at the end of each period, I'm on during the intermissions. And then when the game's over, I'm on again during the post game. And that's always a fun time for those that maybe want a little behind the scenes. Paul goes into the locker room when the game is over. I'm talking on the air on post game as I'm talking right now. The producer in my ear is communicating with Paul. Paul might be, saying, hey, I'm just about ready to talk with Alex Tuck. The producer in my ear is talking to me while I'm talking. I've got to listen and talk at the same time, which can be a challenge. He's saying, stand by for Tuck, or we're going to have Tuck in a moment. I keep talking, and then literally my producer in my ear is saying, Tuck, Tuck, Tuck in my ear. And then I have to wrap up quickly what I'm saying the best I can to make it sound somewhat smooth. And then I say, let's go live now to Carolina. Here's Alex Tuck with Paul Hamilton. And then boom, he goes up. The producer is potting him up on the board, potting me down on the board, up and down, kind of doing some work there. Paul does that live interview with the player. He tosses it back to me. They pot Paul down, they pot me up on the board, all that sort of stuff, communication. And then I start talking again, maybe about something that Alex Tuck just said. And then it could be 10 seconds later, it could be 2 minutes later, Paul gets the next interview that's live, and we do it all again. And then we'll do it again. And then we wait for Lindy Ruff, and we do it again. And then I talk to Paul. So that whole, first half hour of the pregame show, for those of you on the, you're not seeing any of it, but there's a lot of what I would call organized chaos going on in the background between the producer talking into my ear. If I'm in the press box for a home game, so I'm in the press box, the producer's back in our Amherst studios, Paul's in the locker room. So we have 3 people talking to each other, all from different locations, all to kind of keep that all in sync. And we try to make it as smooth as we can on the radio in terms of those transitions and tosses back and forth. I like it even sometimes when it's not even perfect because it's live. And I think listeners appreciate the fact that it's live radio and the fact that, hey, Brian's in the middle of a thought on something. And now, here's Alex Lyons standing by with Paul, and Brian's got to stop what he's talking and toss to Paul. And Paul says, thank you, Brian. Now I'm here with Alex Lyons. Like, there's a whole bunch of coordination going on. And I kind of like the way that sounds on the radio, even when it's not even perfect, perfect, because I think it's live. And I think people really appreciate the fact that it's happening on the fly. And, we're giving you that instant live reaction as soon as the game is over. I think that's a big piece of why people like listening to the postgame show.
Like, where could my listeners or viewers find you at or contact?
Sure.
You?
So I tweet during every game. I tweet a lot of those post-game quotes that we were just talking about. So on Twitter, or now X, of course, Brian WGR, Brian WGR is my handle. On Instagram and Twitter, I've got my T to Green account as well that I do a lot of golf stuff across Western New York. That's T, the number two, at T to G Buffalo, at T2G Buffalo, T to G for T to Green. So we're on Instagram and on Twitter there as well. And then our T to Green YouTube page as well. It's t2greenradio.com. So we do a lot of live streams every Saturday morning. So if you like hearing golf talk, we do shows from March through Labor Day in September, every Saturday morning, 7 to 8. And then, of course, I'm on the air for every single Sabres game. So when I'm on the air, because whenever the Sabres game starts, I'll be there to welcome you at 7 o'clock or like tonight or whenever the game ends up starting.
Do you have any other questions before we wrap up?
No, Robbie, I think you answered them all. I just want to thank you for having me on. I appreciate it. It's been a pleasure to get to know you here since I've got introduced to you a few weeks ago. And I wish you the best of luck with your podcast going forward.
Yeah. Thank you for coming on, and hopefully we can connect again soon.
I agree. Sounds great, Robbie. Thank you.